Heads. Oh, hey. I am trying to do an experiment to see whether heads or tails happens more often. Trying to bust a myth that I heard that said that tails happens more often than heads, but I think that's untrue. I think I can bust that. My reason is because there's two options, either heads or tails. And so it's going to end up 50-50. But I'm going to do an experiment just so I can bust that myth. That was inspired by something I read in a book, and it's a nonfiction book called National Geographic Kids Myths Busted. It's by Emily Krieger. So I know this is nonfiction because it's not made up. It's a bunch of facts that show how myths, that means things that people think are true, aren't true. So I know that's nonfiction. And nonfiction books have some really cool text features. That means things about them that make it interesting to read and make the information really clear. One of them is they have a great cover, just like a fiction book. They have a title page, just like a fiction book. And then they have a table of contents, which you don't often see in fiction. Sometimes you have chapters in the table of contents, but this helps me find the part that I want without having to read all the way through. It also has an index, so if I wanted to read about a topic or a certain thing, I don't have to guess based on the title. I can just go, well, let's see, I want to read about space objects, and I can read about that on page 114, 118, or 119. Or I want to read about spiders, and I could find it on any of these pages here. So that's what the index is for, if you have a certain topic you want to read about. But I went by the name of the story. So if I went through here and I found the one about pennies, right here, it says Bad Luck Pennies. It's not the same as my experiment, but it inspired my experiment because it's similar. So if I go find page 50, here is the myth that inspired my myth busting. It says, myth, it's bad luck to pick up a tails up penny. So that's the title of it. And here is another heading that tells me it's about how it started, the origin. Heads and tails may have been thought to signify beginnings and endings. That could be why heads beginnings is thought to be lucky and tails endings isn't. That makes sense. It says, pick me up if you know what's good for you. There's Abraham Lincoln, and it shows his head because on one side of a penny, here in America, is Abraham Lincoln's head, and on the back is a monument. If we look at, well, that's how that is with this penny that I was using. Here's Abraham Lincoln's head, and on the other side is the monument. Now, some of the newer ones, they still have his head on one side, but if you turn it over, they have a shield on the other side. And there's some old ones that have wheat growing around this side. Those are pretty cool, but they're hard to find now. In other countries, though, they use different things. Like here's a dime from Canada, and it has the Queen's head on the front, and it has a ship on the back. And then here's one from Korea. It's pretty cool. It's got a hole in the middle so that you could string it with some other coins and not lose it. That's pretty neat. All right, so let's find out if they busted that myth about it being unlucky. I think that's untrue too. Busted. It says people pick up tails up pennies all the time with no problems. So they must have done an experiment. It says, in fact, there's about a 50-50 chance of a coin landing that way. Told ya. Calling heads or tails has been a tradition for centuries. That means for many hundreds of years. Kids in ancient Rome even called navia aut caput, ship or head, because their coins had a ship on one side. Kind of like the one from Canada. Oh, we've got another text box over here. That means it's another little piece of information that is related to the rest of this, but it's not the same as the rest of this. So it's just like a little tidbit. A penny doubled every day for 30 days is almost $11 million. That's some awesome math. So if you have a penny today and it doubled to 2 tomorrow, it would double to 4 the next day. It would double to 8 the next day. It starts to get pretty big. Then 16, then 32, then 64. Exponential. That means it just goes whoosh, tons of it. Up to $11 million. Now that inspired me because they didn't give their information of how they knew it was 50-50. So I was like, I need to check it out. So I started flipping a penny and keeping track on a table. That's another text feature. If you have a table or a graph that shows information, that makes it more clear in your nonfiction reading. So heads I've got 5 times and tails 4 times. That's pretty close to half. the more I do it, the closer it'll be to half. Because if I only do it a few times, there's a chance that I could end up with more of one or the other. But the more I do it, the closer I'll see that it is to half. I challenge you. Grab a penny or a nickel or whatever coin you find lying around and make tally marks for each one and see if you can get about half when you flip a coin. You flip a coin by setting it on top of your thumb and flicking your thumb. It can either land in your hand or on the pit or on like a bed or something else. And that one came up heads. So I've got another heads. See, like right now I've got 6 on one side and 4 on another. But if I do it more, I bet it'll come up to half. I'll have to keep trying. Have a good weekend.